Welcome to part 4 of the most valuable Star Wars CCG cards. Same wording as last time. If you haven't seen the other videos, you might want to for context. But today we are on to the last segment and the most valuable segment of all the cards. These are the Japanese mains, or Japanese main characters. So unlike franchises like Pokemon or even Yu-Gi-Oh! That started in Japan, Star Wars CCG was first published in the United States and later came to Japan. So the Japanese cards are not the originals, they're translations, as you can see. And they were produced later in Japan, and Japan was the only place where they were translated. So they licensed this to a game company called Takara. Takara printed the first set Premier in 1997, so 2 years after Premier Limited came out in the United States. And then they produced 2 more sets, Hoth and A New Hope, which came out in 1998, as far as I know, although I'm not sure if anyone really knows for sure unless they were around and collecting at the time. So these cards are a lot more scarce than the English ones, a lot harder to come by. And the first one is one of the most valuable, Luke Skywalker. So with all of these, it's very, very hard to know what they're worth right now. I got them for probably, in most cases, less than they're worth right now. Not all cases, but most, because I bought them a year and a half to a year ago. And prices have since increased, but they are fluctuating. And they sell so infrequently on eBay. A lot of them are private sales or just not sold at all because there are so few, and my suspicion is they've ended up in a lot of permanent collections. But this first one, Luke Skywalker, probably now worth about $300. And this is just the exact Japanese translation of the English version, exactly the same otherwise. Although as far as I know, there were a number of translating errors. It wasn't done sort of in a sort of high quality way. Next main character from Premier, Han Solo. This one's probably worth about $200. Just for comparison with the English versions, the English version of this is now worth about 25. English version of this is worth about 10 to 15. But so Japanese, multiply it by 10 or 15 to get what it's worth in the case of this Premier set. So this one's worth about 200 right now. Leia Organa, worth about also probably 200, maybe closer to $150. C-3PO, this one's hard to value because I think the English version of this is worth only 5, whereas these are somewhere between 10 and 25 in English. But the Japanese version most recently sold for I think 260. So I don't know if that's what it's worth or that was just a couple of people really wanted it. They were missing this one card for their collection. In the past, I valued this around 150. And Obi-Wan Kenobi. Probably worth about 250. English version maybe 10 to 15, but again, it fluctuates. And then, this isn't a character card, but I would still consider it a main, the Millennium Falcon, because it's a main ship. This is probably one of my favorite cards ever. I love the English version of this and the Japanese version too. This is probably worth about 200 as well. The English version is worth about 15. Now for the dark side, we have the #1 most expensive Star Wars CCG card is Darth Vader. This is, again, straight Japanese translation of the English version. Unlike the foil version, right? The foil, if you remember from a previous video, was a box topper, sort of a promo you can get if you bought, or case topper, if you bought a whole case of the set of reflections too. So that one's worth about $70 to $80. This one, Japanese, depending on condition, worth $500 to $600. This condition, as far as I can tell, is pretty flawless. I mean, graded, who knows? This could be like a 7 or maybe an 8, probably not higher. But I do know there is one copy of this at a BGS 9.5 that someone bought for, I think it was $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,300. And is only BGS 9.5 as far as I know. Grading, we can talk about this in another video, but grading isn't yet super popular in the Star Wars CCG, only for these super high-end cards, and even then the pop is like 1 or 2 per card among all grades. So probably not going to get this one graded. But again, ungraded, $500 to $600 and the most valuable card. I think a lot of people consider Grand Moff Tarkin a main character too, even though, not a ton of screen time and only in the first movie. Japanese, again, probably worth 150. And I personally consider the named Star Destroyers as mains as well, so this is the Devastator. Don't know what this is worth, but I'd say probably go for 100, maybe 150 right now. And that is it for Premier. So as I mentioned, Japanese Premier came out, as far as I know, in 1997. They also produced first A New Hope in 1998. So A New Hope, it seems like these cards are much more widely available. These cards are not worth nearly as much. So English version of Chewbacca is worth, I don't know, $3 because it's a rare 2, not a rare 1 unlike the others. So it's half as rare, which is nice about A New Hope. They made some of the main characters, rare 2s instead of rare 1s. But English is worth $3, Japanese maybe 20, maybe 25 or 30. And it seems like it's kind of a different look than the other Japanese cards, or at least there's more text on this one, so the font just looks different to me. But I don't read or speak Japanese, so I don't know. R2-D2, also from A New Hope, and also relatively inexpensive. It's a rare 2. In English, it's worth, I don't know, a few dollars. In Japanese, probably about 20. And I would consider, again, the named capital starships as main. So I loved Hint of 4. It's one of my favorite cards. Japanese version as well. I don't know what this is worth, but again, probably not more than $30, maximum $40 right now. There weren't, as far as I know, any dark side main characters in A New Hope, but again, counting named Star Destroyers as mains, this is Conquest, probably also worth about $30 or $40. I really like the look of this one in Japanese. And the Death Star itself. This is probably worth about 15 to 20. Maybe I'd call it 20 to be generous. So again, the New Hope one's not worth nearly as much as Premier, just because they seem to be a lot more widely available. As far, most recently you could get a Japanese box of A New Hope for $400 or $500. I think the most recent sale is $600, so it might have gone up a bit for an entire booster box of 30-something packs. A booster box of Premier Limited, where again, the chances of pulling these is much, much lower because all these cards I'm showing are rare 1s instead of rare 2s. But a booster box of Japanese Premier, who knows? Who knows? Somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. And last, we have the Japanese version of Hoth, which I think also came out in 1998. Starting off with the only really sort of, in my opinion, main character from Hoth, Commander Luke Skywalker. This, most recently, I had actually a few copies of these. I sort of lucked into buying some. One of them is off to be graded because it looks flawless. This one is sort of nearly flawless in my opinion, but I don't know if it would get higher than a PSA 8. I sold most recently this for $120, but that was about 6 months ago. I think now these are worth probably close to $200. And just incredibly scarce. As far as I can tell, I think Japanese Premier was printed the second least. I think Hoth was printed the least. And again, A New Hope, Japanese, I think relatively more common. And then, I'm counting this as a main because there are a few Sophie mains in Hoth, is Anakin's Lightsaber, which is a lightsaber that Luke Skywalker uses. I should note that there is a foil version of this one in Japanese, and actually forgot to mention there's a foil version of this one in Japanese, a foil version of this one in Japanese, and this one. Those foil versions are not true Japanese cards. What do I mean? They're foil versions that were included as a foil card in the set Reflections 3. So instead of getting a regular foil, you get a Japanese foil of one of these cards. Not all of them, but some of these cards. Which, again, I think those foil versions are really cool, but they're not true Japanese. They're just foils in Reflections 3 and worth somewhere, each between a couple dollars to maybe maximum $20 or $30 each. There's a foil version of this in Japanese. It's probably worth a handful of dollars. But this one, I think most recently sold for $75 or $80. So if anyone shows you Japanese foil cards from Star Wars CCG, it's not the real Japanese, or at least not in my opinion, and it wasn't at least produced or distributed in Japan like the other ones, and not worth nearly as much. So for dark side mains in Hoth, not sure if you'd count Admiral Ozzel as a main. I got this I think for $70, but now I've seen people go for close to $200 for this. And I'm missing what I would consider to be another main, or another rare one from Hoth, General Veers. The reason is they're incredibly scarce, and rumor has it that when they printed the Japanese version of Hoth, they actually messed up and printed twice as many light side cards as dark side cards. So basically, these dark side rares were half as frequent as light side, whereas they were supposed to appear 1-to-1, at least they did in the English version. So it's very, very hard to find the dark side rare ones from Hoth. Thankfully, I have this Ozzel, but I'm missing Veers, and the last time it auctioned, it sold for $300. So I wasn't quite willing to pay that at the time. Maybe I would be willing to pay that much. Next time it comes up, we'll have to see. I'm still convinced that they're out there somewhere, just the sellers haven't come out of the woodwork. But it is one of the last few cards I'm waiting on to complete my collection, is General Veers. Thankfully, I do have the 2 Star Destroyers, so this is Stalker from Hoth. No idea what this is worth, honestly. Maybe people would buy it for $200 or even $300 because it's also a rare one from Hoth. And Tyrant. This one's also sad because it is not in good condition. It's beat up over here. I think besides for this, every other card in my collection, or almost every one, is near mint or better. This one I bought because it's the only one I could find for sale, so I got it for a big discount. It even has this kind of bend in the corner. I'm looking to upgrade this and get a nicer one. I'm also looking for other dark side rare ones from Hoth, including Blizzard 1, Blizzard Scout 1, which I personally, I don't know if I'd consider the mains, but to me, I want to have as part of my collection. So I'm looking for the General Veers. I'm looking to upgrade the Tyrant and get Blizzard 1 and Blizzard Scout 1. Other than that, those are the Japanese Hoth mains. And reviewing again, Japanese and Hopeman's worth a fraction of the others. And I think probably the best cards produced of all time, just in terms of how appealing and scarce they are. The main characters from Premiere. And we can end with the best one, Darth Vader. So thank you for tuning along for the series. If you have any questions, please do let me know in the comments. There's a pretty active Star Wars CCG community on Facebook. There's the sort of main group and a couple of other side groups that are devoted to trading. As you know, I'm a collector, not a player of this game, but these cards bring me a lot of joy. I hope you've enjoyed looking at them and sort of seeing which are the most valuable, and hopefully you'll watch some more videos soon.